on the East Coast. Yes.
Hi, my name is Candice Constantine, and I'm with a company called Interfluve. We're a small firm, about 50 people, scientists and engineers who specialize in river and wetland restoration. And we've been talking a lot about dams and implications for fish, and so this presentation is kind of timely and fun then, because we get to look at taking them down. And I thought this was a good venue for presenting some recent results on a couple of cases of series of dam removals and some immediate observations on fish returning to spawn in these areas. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go over kind of our experience in the Northeast on dam removal projects, some of the key design considerations in designing dam removals for fish passage, some examples, that's the fun bit, and then and also the recent data on use by native fish, and then some thoughts on permitting and how we help to streamline dam removal projects and see more of that happen. Okay, so in terms of Interfluve's experience, we've been working in dam removals nationwide since the 1990s, and in the Northeast primarily since, well, very heavily active since around 2007 when activity picked up in Massachusetts around dam removal. And we've been involved in over 100 dam removals across the country, and of course are only one tiny piece of a dam removal project. There's so many partners that are all key in making these things happen. So federal, state, and local agencies, the Nature Conservancy, American Rivers, tribes, watershed councils, citizen groups, landowners, and the list goes on and on. So each one of these projects has a huge host of people that made it happen. This is a recent dam removal project. This is West Britannia Dam on the Mill River in Massachusetts, and I'll show you the before and after for the site. Yeah. So in terms of key design considerations, obviously a lot of these projects are motivated at least in part by fish passage. So when we go to look at dam removal, and this is going to depend on where we are in the watershed obviously, but in the lower gradient reaches of a watershed, we will be looking at trying to allow for passage, particularly in coastal watersheds, of all the native species that might have naturally used that area. So generally, kind of rule of thumb is we often, within the constraints that we're faced with on the site, try to aim for looking at replacing the bed with something that's a riffle structure perhaps, that's not any steeper than around 2.5%, and with average velocities during migratory periods a couple of feet per second. Something that can easily be passed by a range of ages and species. But of course, that has to be fit in with all the other things going on at the site. And we work with a host of experts who can help us on those criteria. In terms of another major design consideration in the Northeast is around sediment. Obviously, on the West Coast, a lot of the dam removals we work with, in those dams, most of the sediment impounded behind the dam is clean. And here in the Northeast, obviously, a lot of these, in particular the low-head dams, went in for industrial purposes, and there is often a legacy of contamination. So sediment management is a really key component of dam removals. And then finally, at least for here in the Northeast, something that's really significant, because these dams went in around infrastructure, a lot of the infrastructure remains and is still in use. So the other main constraint is often neighboring infrastructure and how to maintain the integrity of that infrastructure through the process of dam removal and into the future. And this is that was just a picture of one of the dam removal I'm going to show you next. This is a historical area in Andover, and this is just a picture of them craning in the excavator to do the work in the channel because of some constraints around local infrastructure. So we recently worked on a couple of dam removals on the Shawsheen River, which coincidentally is in the Merrimack watershed. And this one is near the town green in Andover. And this was this dam had some historical significance. You can see that when we took the dam out, we left some remnants of the dam structure in for historical reasons, and reconstructed the bed using a fairly low gradient riffle construction. So that's rounded river rock of a large grade of sizes, and there's a framework in there where the largest particles are sized so that they don't move, but it allows for active exchange of the smaller particles. So you are restoring not only the aquatic species connectivity, the flow connectivity, but also the sediment connectivity. This is just generally for all these that I'll be talking about. We work on the design, sediment management, planning, permitting, and construction phases. This dam was removed in winter of 2017, and then a mile upstream was a second dam that was also removed at the same time at Marlin Place. This was an older structure. You can see it's the dam up there in the picture, the inset picture, and then this is the site after that dam was removed. The removal of both of these dams opened up an additional 4 miles of spawning habitat. There is one dam remaining upstream of these sites. Okay. All right, so I thought it was good to talk a little bit about the Marlin Place dam removal, because originally the reconstruction of the channel was designed along those lines that I had mentioned earlier. But upon getting to the site and beginning construction, it was discovered that there had been some work done under the bridge up there in the photograph, where they had placed a bunch of scour protection and raised the bed level under the bridge. So we could no longer make that grade requirement, the 2.5%, and we had to adjust the design for that. So there was some concern at this site, is if we adjusted the design, were we going to get passage or adequate passage conditions here. So we did a couple of things to accommodate that. Obviously, we weren't going to remove riprap or knock riprap down, because that was put there for a reason. We did not have a hand in designing that. So we extended our riffle structure to meet that riprap, and it ended up being 200 feet long, which is about twice to 1.5 times longer than we had hoped that steeper section would be, and then more around sort of 3%, 3.5%, something like that. So the way we sort of compensated for the increase in velocity and length of this area of the channel is we purposefully and sort of strategically incorporated large boulders and boulder clusters to provide refugia through this area. And so we, by doing that, expect that there will be obviously locations where flows are faster than the average flows, but hopefully also some decent enough locations that are adequately connected where the flows will be slower than those flows. And so this is just a bird's eye view of what that structure looks like. It was all done in the wet, so I don't have a dry picture of that. And that's an engineer of ours out in the river channel directing the machine operator where to place those boulders. And then the exciting bit is that we have some data from volunteers who have been out monitoring fish passage, and they have found in 2017, so the same year that the dam was removed, it was removed in January, that spring, they estimate there were somewhere around 1,500 river herring making it past the site. In 2018, 1,800 river herring, thereabouts, making it past the site, and some observations of gizzard shad and probably some other species that I don't know about. So they're obviously making it past this, which is fantastic. And also, the really exciting thing is that in a couple of years, say 2020, 2021, we want to see what's going to happen when the offspring return here, and hopefully we'll see much higher numbers. And then the next river that I'm going to look at is the Mill River, also in Massachusetts. These dam removals were completed over quite a time span. The first one was the downstream dam, State Hospital Dam, removed in 2012. And then Wittenden Pond Dam, which was removed in 2013. And this dam kind of spurned a lot of or started off a lot of the dam removal activity, at least in Massachusetts because it nearly failed in 2005 and 2,000 residents of the city were evacuated. And I think that just puts some focus on defunct dams or deficient dams in the state and even low-head dams and what kinds of damage dam failures can create. And so there was a bit more emphasis placed on dam removal at that point. And then the final dam was removed in early 2018, and by the spring, the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries documented 1,700 river herring entering a lake just upstream of these sites. And here's a photo from them, from their monitoring equipment, showing those passing through the fishway. They also documented sea lamprey, gizzard shad, and trout, and told me that their eel ladder had more young year eels than in all their other monitoring years combined. And then the last one I thought I'd showcase is another project I have some recent fish data for, but it's obviously not a dam removal, but this is a bypass, naturalized bypass channel on the Howland Dam, which is also coincidentally in the Penobscot River in Maine. This one was constructed in 2015, and it was designed with a focus on ESA-listed Atlantic salmon, but it was designed for a wider range of native species. The aim was to accommodate as many species as possible, given the constraints. So since that time, and a major partner on this project was the Atlantic Salmon Federation, and they have been monitoring and have discovered that it's being used readily by adult salmon and juvenile eels, that they monitored and recorded large numbers of river herring using it, into 2018. And they're finding that salmon, parr, and juvenile eels are using areas of the bypass for rearing, and they've also documented that smolt survival is greatly improved. So, in order to see all these fantastic things happen, there is the downside, which is permitting. No one likes permitting. But that does have to happen, and I think one thing that everyone would like to see is for that to become as efficient as possible for these types of projects, river restoration projects in general, but dam removal projects, so that funding dollars go as far as they can go, and they're not eaten up in this process of permitting. So some of the general problems that persist in a lot of states is